Alright, so in today's video, we're going to be taking another look at this guy here. This is the AxisFlying 256 thermal FPV camera, which I've got installed on my Heewing T2 VTOL here. Now, I already did a video about this camera a couple of weeks ago. I showed some flight footage that I recorded with a camera installed on this aircraft. And it was very, very cool to sort of have an aerial perspective of the world and sort of look at it in thermal. However, if you saw that video, you'll know that the footage that was recorded was black and white. And that is because by default, when you buy this camera, it's locked in a black and white mode where black is cold and white is hot. Now, that works fine, and it looks very, very cool. However, I did notice in the little instruction leaflet that came with the camera that it said that this camera was capable of also shooting in color. So for the last couple of weeks, that's what I've been working on. I've been trying to figure out how to get this camera to go into color mode. Now, unfortunately, it's been quite complicated to do. So I ended up reaching out to AxisFlying, and I basically sort of asked, how do I do this? And all that they did was send me a more detailed instruction manual. However, it actually really wasn't very helpful. The instruction manual basically listed a whole load of things like hexadecimal codes or binary codes that you need to send to the camera to get it to change the different color modes as well as various other settings. But they didn't provide any information about how you're actually supposed to do that, like how do you actually connect to the camera and sort of what software to use to interface with it. And then AxisFlying then stopped replying to my messages. So yeah, I can't really give AxisFlying any credit for sort of like good customer support. So yeah, over the last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of time trying to figure out how to do this for myself. And I've relied on ChatGPT quite heavily. And that was sort of useful. I ended up using a whole lot of different programs. I think I used one called Putty, one called RealTerm. I used a FTDI adapter, and I also tried using an Arduino. And eventually I finally managed to have a little bit of success when I was using some Python coding with the camera connected to my computer via an FTDI adapter. I was eventually able to get the camera to switch into some of the color modes. However, the problem was, as soon as I turned the camera off, like power cycled it, it would default back to black and white. And I couldn't get the camera to save the settings. And unfortunately, I was never able to figure out how to get past that. ChatGPT couldn't figure out either, so I was kind of stumped. However, one of my subscribers, a guy named Dwayne, who lives in America, he is a bit of a genius. I think he's got like previous experience in his career, sort of working with sort of like building sort of custom hardware and especially a lot of coding and stuff. And he ended up buying himself one of these cameras. And then what he did was he made like a little microcontroller, which is called a propeller. And then he wrote his own custom software to go onto that, which allowed him to then interface with the camera. Now, Dwayne was very kind, and he sent me one of his boards, and I'm going to show it to you now. So I've got it hidden just down in here. Hopefully you can see it okay. This is very much a prototype board, so the quality is not fantastic, but that doesn't matter. But basically, this little board here, it's got a little microcontroller in the middle of it, and it's wired up to the camera down in the front there, because the camera's got a TX and RX pair of wires, basically a UART. So this little board is wired up to the UART, and then this here is an FTDI adapter, which allows you to connect to a computer, and then use some software, I think it's called Parallax something, I'll put it on the bottom of the screen. But you use some this Parallax software so you can then communicate with the camera. And the software that he wrote allows you, it basically made like a little mini sort of like user interface. You can then program the camera, change those color palettes, and crucially, save the color palettes. So what I now have is, whereas before this camera would default to black and white mode, it now defaults to color mode. As soon as I turn this, power this aircraft up, this camera will now be in color mode, which is obviously fantastic. However, Dwayne went a little bit further than that. So this board doesn't just allow you to communicate with the camera via your computer. He's also put into his custom code some special like sort of coding, which is basically allowing this to communicate with my receiver, so that now on my radio, this switch here, when I flick this switch, I can change the color palettes in flight. And I say palettes rather than palette because this camera is actually capable of doing 15 different palettes. Some of them are black and white or monochrome, and then there's a whole load of different color ones. So what I can now do, thanks to Dwayne, is that when I'm flying, I can flick this switch and I can cycle through all of the different color palettes. I can try every single different one. And I can go forwards and backwards, and I can choose whichever one I want as I'm flying, which is absolutely fantastic. It's really, really good. And I've got to give massive credit to Dwayne for sort of developing this board, developing the software, and then being kind enough to send me one so that I can test it out. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to power this aircraft up, and then I'll show you all of the different color palettes so you can see what they look like for yourself. Let's go. Alright, so what you're seeing on the screen now is just the image from the AxisFlying thermal camera using the default color palette mode, the black and white one where black is cold and white is hot. If you buy the camera, this is the mode that you get, by default. What I'm now going to do is using my radio, I'm going to press this switch here, and it's going to allow me to cycle through all of the different color palettes that are available. I think there's 15 of them. Some are very colorful, some are not so much, but yeah, you'll see as we go. So as I said, this is the default mode. Black is cold, white is hot. There is no color. The next mode is then this one here, which is basically the inverted version of that. So now white is cold and black is hot. Not really sure why you'd want to sort of use this mode, but yeah, this is one of the options that they give you. So the next one is this one here. And yeah, this is the first sort of full color mode. And this is also, I think, my favorite mode. So obviously in this one here, yellow is sort of like hot, like the brighter the yellow, the hotter it is. And then purple is cold, sort of pushing into sort of like dark blue. That's sort of the coldest colors. But yeah, this is my favorite mode. And this is the one that I've actually programmed onto my camera to now be the default. So now when I power up the aircraft, it defaults to this mode rather than just to black and white. So yeah, the next one is this one here. This is a little bit more of a colourful mode. You can see there's a few more sort of colours here. Got red, green and blue, even a little bit of sort of like yellowish going on. Don't personally love this mode, but I mean, yeah, if you do, then fair enough. Next is this one here. So as you can see, this is like a very much a red and yellow. This is one of the first modes where I can sort of demonstrate the difference in resolution. So if you look at my face here, there isn't really any detail going on in my face at all. It's like same my hair as well. Basically, if something's warm, it's yellow. If it's cold, it's red. There isn't really sort of much spectrum of sort of like temperature variance sort of going on here. This would probably be a really useful mode if you were sort of like trying to do like a search and rescue operation, I reckon. If you're trying to find like a person sort of like lost in the woods or something, because anything with heat just glows bright yellow. You don't really get much sort of like detail, but it just glows bright yellow. Whereas everything that's sort of like colder just sort of appears red. Not the most exciting sort of like color mode sort of to look at, but possibly one of the more useful ones. So the next one is this one here. And you'll see this as we cycle through them. Like a lot of them are quite similar. So the one I mentioned a minute ago I quite liked, that was like a yellow and sort of purple. This is also a sort of yellow and purple, but like the resolution's a little bit different. Again, sort of not so much detail in my face or my shirt or my hair and stuff. But yeah, anything that's warm is sort of glowing quite bright, but it's a little bit more resolution than the previous mode. Next we have this one here. Again, quite similar to sort of the previous one. Just sort of like maybe a little bit more sort of like contrast, I guess. You can see more detail on my face. You can actually see my lips sort of moving here, kind of make up my hair or my beard and stuff. Quite similar to the previous one, but with a little bit more resolution. So this one here, so all these different modes have all got different names. This one's literally called brown. I'm sure you can work out why. Not really sure why you'd want this mode. It's not sort of particularly visually pleasing to look at, and yeah, you don't really sort of get like the most amazing sort of detail, but yeah. This is one of the options. Next we have this one here. So this is a little bit more of a colourful palette, but yeah, you're not getting a whole lot of detail in this one. I mean, like, look at this. Like, if I put my hand in front of my top and hold it still, it almost kind of gets a little bit camouflaged into my top. There's not a lot of like sort of like resolution or like contrast. So yeah, I'm not really sure why you want this mode other than, it just looks sort of quite nice. Next, Another sort of like yellowy, purpley mode. There's quite a few of these modes, they're all sort of quite similar. I'm not really sure why you choose one over another. I guess it's just a personal preference. Next, so this is another black and white mode. However, it's not the same as the default mode. Where have I put it down here? So yeah, this is black and white. White is hot, black is cold, same as the default mode. However, if you've got something that's really hot, like a lighter with a flame, as you can see, the flame actually shows up as red. So this is the only color that you get in this palette, you get red. But basically this is showing you, this is highlighting the hottest part of the image. If something's really, really warm, it will show up as red. This again might be useful for, like, I guess, search and rescue operations. If you're trying to find a person that's sort of lost in the woods or something, like, in theory, they'd be the hottest object on the scene, so they'd glow red. I also imagine this would be a useful mode if you're sort of like trying to do like diagnostics of like electronics or sort of machinery or something. So it'll just show you, which is the hottest part of the image. So yeah, so you've got that other black and white mode there. Next we have this mode here. So this is probably the most colourful mode of the lot. You've got the full spectrum of colours here, all of the different colours of the rainbow. And you get the most resolution, so that, as you can see, there's so much more detail in my face, in my shirt, in my hair, loads more sort of detail resolution. The only downside to this mode is it's not so bad looking at me, but if you're looking at like a sort of an outdoor scene, it actually can become a little bit difficult to sort of work out what you're looking at. If you're sort of looking at like sort of fine structures, like details on buildings and stuff, it gets quite hard to make out those details because obviously there's so many different colours coming at you all at once. It's always going to be personal preference, I guess, which mode you like. If you want the most colourful mode, this is probably the one to go for. But, in terms of actually being able to make out details, this might not be the best option. Next, we have this mode here. So I actually really like this mode. As you can see, it's just a green mode. I really like this mode because it just looks like, proper sort of like special ops, military, night vision. Don't get the most amazing resolution, although it's better than some of the others. Obviously, make it my beard, my lips and stuff. Like, it's just a very cool looking mode. To me, it's very aesthetically pleasing. Might not be the best mode for sort of like making out details and stuff, but yeah, I think this mode looks really, really cool. Next mode is then this one here, which is basically the same as the last one, that's just red. I'm not really sure why you want a red mode, but yeah, you have that as an option. And then I think this next one here is the last one. And yeah, this is also another pretty colourful mode, but not quite as much resolution as the other really colourful mode. You're able to kind of make out sort of what you're looking at a little bit better, but you don't get like the full amount of like sort of thermal information and detail coming at you. So yeah, so that's just a quick look at all of the different modes. Like I said, there are 15 of them. I think there's benefits to each of them. It really depends on the situation and the use case. But yeah, so I think the thing to do now is wait for it to get dark, and then we'll take the aircraft out for a flight, get it up in the air, and then we'll have another look at all of those color modes and actually see what they're like, in sort of a bit more of a real world situation. So yeah, I'm not going to make you wait for it to get dark though. We'll just do a jump screen. Let's go. Alright, so as you can see, it's now several hours later and it is dark. Sunset was about an hour ago, so it's sort of probably about as dark as it's going to get. And the aircraft is all powered up and ready to go. I've got a sat lock. Just to explain, so the image you're seeing on the screen at the moment, that's from the standard visible light FPV camera. That's my Runcam Phoenix. We'll take the aircraft up into the air and then I'll switch it into the thermal camera once we get up to an altitude of around sort of like 30, 40 meters. Okay, so less procrastinating, let's arm the aircraft. Armed. Throttle up. There we go, and then we'll start to climb. Whoop. She's got a bit of a wobble on her. She often does this at the start of a flight for some reason. And then she stabilises, as you can see. So I'm trying to control this with the same hand I'm using to hold my phone here. So let's take her up, climb her up. And I'll turn off the phone recording now. And we'll stick with just using the DVR recording. So it's going to just reposition the aircraft a bit because I don't want it to be directly overhead. Otherwise I will be in the signal null zone. So just want to move the aircraft forwards, a little bit further away. So that'll probably do. I'll try and hold the altitude there. And if I turn the aircraft round and aim the camera down, hopefully we'll be able to spot where I am. There I am, that little light down there, that is me. So let's now switch to the thermal camera. Enabled. I still haven't managed to figure out what's causing this this glitching whilst it transitions. I had a few ideas, but none of them worked out, which is annoying. So where am I? There I am. So as you can see at the moment, the colour palette I've got enabled is the black hot colour palette. So you can see me there. If I wave, I'm appearing black against the background, but obviously black is hot. So let's now change through some of the colour palettes here. Just adjusting the camera in here. So there we go. So that is the default colour palette. So that's the one I used before. White is hot. Let's now try some of the other ones. So there is one of the colour ones. That does look very cool, doesn't it? Let's just quickly cycle through all of these. Oh, the red one looks quite menacing actually. Look at that. Just trying to keep the camera aimed on me. I'm a little bit in the signal null zone here, which is what I was worried about. So I apologise that there's a little bit of interference here. I might just try and move the aircraft a bit further away, just to try and get me out of the signal dead zone there. See if that helps. Yeah, so that's the red colour palette. So the next one should be the green one. That looks so cool. Look at that. We will have a look around in a minute, but I just wanted to just quickly cycle through all of them. So there's one of the full colour ones. That's the one where very hot objects are red, but everything else is monochrome. I'm surprised actually that I'm not showing up as red. What's next? There's another colour one. Another colour one. There's the brown coloured one. Another colour one. Another colour one. Just realised I am climbing a bit, just reduce that throttle. It's quite hard to get this aircraft to just hold its altitude in one place. So just cycling through all of the different colour palettes here. And there we are, so we're back to the beginning. So that is the standard colour palette. Just bring the altitude down just a little bit. We'll try and hover her around there. So I think the thing to do now, so there's some cars over there. There's my car, you can kind of see it's glowing, so obviously I've just finished driving it. So let's have a look at that in colour. Look at that, that looks so cool. I want to have a look around a little bit. So there's looking off into the distance. So there's looking off across the town. There's no mistaking what's hot versus what's cold when you've got a colour palette. So in this one here, red is hot, blue is cold. Where am I? Yeah, so you see, I'm red. Let's try a different one. Red one's really quite surreal, isn't it? Not really sure it works. It doesn't really give away much in sort of like terms of thermal information though, does it? It just looks like I'm looking at everything with like a red filter. So there's a green one. There's my car. So there's cars over there. Yeah, you don't really, I just realised I'm losing altitude here. You can't really make out so much like thermal information with this colour palette. Although it is cool, sort of seeing everything in this sort of like night ops kind of green colour. not really gaining a lot of sort of like useful thermal information. It's quite hard to tell what's hot versus what's cold. This one though, so this is like the full color thermal mode. This is probably the most detailed mode with the most sort of like resolution. This does look very, very cool. This is kind of what you imagine in your head when you think of a thermal camera, right? But you see what I mean when I said earlier on, it's quite hard to sort of tell what you're looking at. Obviously there I'm looking across the town at various buildings, but I think if you didn't know what you're looking at, that does just look like a bit of a sort of a multicoloured mess, doesn't it? I mean, it's hard to sort of tell, like, you know, there's a stream there and there's a path beside it, but they both look quite similar. It is hard to kind of make out what it is you're actually looking at with this full colour palette, even though it does look, you know, very, very cool. So I'm climbing again. It's really hard to get this to hold its altitude. But I mean, against the sort of the backdrop of the field that I'm stood in, you can quite clearly see I'm glowing there. You can see me waving. It does work, but yeah, I'm not super convinced by this colour palette. Let's try another one. Don't want a monochrome one, want a colour one, don't we? Here's one of the colour ones. This was actually really hard. You can kind of make out some building shapes there. But yeah, not the best mode, I don't think. I mean, like, it's quite hard to sort of make out the shape of the cars there. It's not as good as some of the other modes, I don't think. Quite like this mode. You can clearly see me there. So this is like a green, yellowy green is hot. Yeah, look at my car there. It's quite hard to make out the shape of the car, but like you can clearly see like the roof is the coldest part. You can kind of make out the engine's the hottest part. Looking out across the city there. Again, quite hard to sort of make out sort of the building shapes and stuff, but yeah, you can really tell what's warm versus what's cold with this mode. And yeah, got quite good resolution as well with this one as well. Let's try another one. There's the brown one. So the brown one's weird. Like, I can easily make out what I'm looking at with this mode. Like, I can clearly sort of make out the houses, the windows, chimneys. Quite good resolution on detail in this mode. Oh yeah, there's a couple of buildings there that are clearly very hot for some reason in the far distance. And yeah, looking at sort of like the cars there. Yeah, this mode's actually quite good. Isn't it crazy how warm trees are? I had someone explain to me after seeing my other videos, apparently the reason why trees are warm is because obviously they're sucking moisture out of the ground, and it's the moisture that's warm. But yeah, that actually works quite well. I mean, again, see me waving. With this mode, it's actually quite easy to make out a person against a dark field. There's a different mode. I think this is the mode that I like the most. This is the one that I've got set as a default. Just climbing a little bit, I got a bit low there. Yeah, this mode works well. Like, I think this sort of gives you like the best of both worlds with this. Like, I can clearly make out the shape of cars. I can tell what I'm looking at. Got good sort of like clarity. I mean, like here I can sort of tell as I look across the town, I'm easy to tell I'm looking at buildings. I'm looking at a cityscape. I'm also getting reasonably good sort of like thermal information as well. So yeah, this is definitely, there's a couple of cars driving there, look. This is definitely my my favourite mode of the lot. Still quite hard to tell the difference between a stream and a path there though. They do both look very, very similar. So yeah, I think that's my favourite mode. What else we got? That mode's very similar. God, look at that, look. So this mode here, the red and yellow, very fiery looking mode. Yeah, like there's the stream there and the path both look like a river of lava. I should explain, it's been a very, very warm day today. So like, even though the sun's set, like I guess the ground is all still quite dark. Look at these, like these rocks across the edge of the field here, look how much they're glowing. Clearly got a lot of heating from the sun. But yeah, good resolution in this mode as well, actually. you know, like looking at these cars here, I can clearly make out the shape of the cars. I mean, on my car here, clearly see, whoops, clearly see like the engine is the hottest part of the car there because I've just finished driving. Again, you can clearly see me. Another very good mode for being able to pick out a person in the dark. Another one of the colour modes. Very cool. Not a massive fan of this particular colour palette. I just don't think it's the most appealing colour palette, but there's that one. Another one of these sort of like purple and yellow ones. I do think these like purple yellow ones are my favourite. I sort of like the most detail. It's just kind of like the atypical sort of like thermal colour palette that like most thermal cameras tend to use these days. Yeah, I like that one. And then yeah, black hot, and then white hot. So let's go back to this one. This is the one I like the most. And let's have a proper little look around with this, shall we? So obviously we've already looked in this direction, looking out across town. Let's have a look a little bit further around. So yeah, this looks really cool. This is so much better in colour, isn't it? Roundabout there, clearly very, very dark. But the tree that's on the roundabout is not as dark, so you can tell the tree is a little bit warmer. Have a look around, see if I can see any sort of signs of people or anything. So this is looking at the supermarket car park. I find it's fascinating here. These are these dark patches that you can see here. So this would have been sort of throughout the day. This is where cars have been parked, which has obviously shielded the ground from the sun's light. That's why all these patches are darker. There's a car there. That's why all these patches are darker than the rest of the tarmac. Clearly see the car's tyres glowing there. You can tell that car's been driving for a while. Very cool. Let's keep sort of spinning around this way. So there's a sports ground over here somewhere. See if there's any people around like there was last time. There's a person on a bike. Interesting actually how that person isn't really appearing to be that hot. I wonder if they're wearing like a lot of like thermal layers or something, because they're not appearing as warm as the tarmac that they're driving across. This is so cool though. Look at this. I do love this this little setup I've got going on at the moment. Yeah, it's amazing how well you can kind of make out things in the dark. This will never, there's another cyclist. This will never get boring. I find this absolutely fascinating. Let me just try changing to a different colour palette. So the person shows up a little bit better, actually, with a different colour palette there. Trying to change. So this is the multicoloured colour palette. Where did the cyclist go? Where did they go? I lost them. Anyway, let's keep looking around. Yeah, it's down here somewhere, there's a sports ground. I want to see if there's any people. And there isn't, there's no one there today. I'm surprised by. Last time I was here, there's a whole load of people there. Let's just cycle through a few more. There's a red one, there's a green one. I do like this green mode. It may not have sort of the greatest sort of like thermal detail. There's a building or structure in the distance there that's very warm. Yeah, it may not have the greatest thermal detail, but this mode does just look very, very cool. And as I said in my last video, look at these weird like glowing patches in the field. I was never able to work out what they were. People sort of speculated it's where like maybe the grass was a little bit thinner. But I did go over there and have a look, and I mean, certainly to the eye, I couldn't tell that. Because this is the grass on a football pitch, so obviously people running around could have worn away the grass. But yeah, to the eye I couldn't make that out. And yes, this little weird structure over here, this is a little mini basketball court. Just looking out over the little mini forest there. And last time I had a look in these fields to see if I could see any animals. So there is a glowing patch there. That might be an animal. Let's try a different thermal palette. Yeah, it's clearly something glowing in that field there, so that could be an animal. Look at this, look. It's amazing how the different trees glow differently. That tree there, that's the radio antenna that's disguised as a tree. See what I mean though with this particular colour palette? This is the one with the most colour information. But it does make it hard to kind of work out what you're looking at. Everything does look sort of quite abstract in comparison to different ones. So that's interesting. So this is the standard black and white mode. You can clearly see animals there. Go back to the colour mode. Well, actually, yeah, you can see them there as well. But yeah, in the black and white mode, they actually stand out so much clearer, don't they? Yeah, I'd argue the black and white mode there actually does a better job of picking out distant animals than this colour mode. Let's cycle through a few colour modes. So that one works quite well. That one's not too bad as well. That one works quite well as well. So I'm struggling to keep the aircraft, keep my goggles aimed at the aircraft and sort of keep going to the signal dead spot. Yeah, actually this red mode works quite well for picking out the animals as well. So hopefully you can kind of appreciate why it's good to actually have the option to flick through these different colour palettes. Because depending on what you're looking at, different details show up depending on which colour palette you use. I still love this green one though. This green one might be my favourite, even though it's not the most practical. It's might be my favourite mode. So yeah, there is just a little bit of a demonstration. Give you a wave again. A bit of a demonstration of the different colour palettes on the AxisFlying 256 thermal FPV camera. I'll get back to my favourite one. It's that one there. Yeah, hopefully it's been a good little demonstration for you to kind of see, you know, what this camera is capable of. Now, what I'm planning to do, I haven't quite worked it out yet, but I want to move the thermal camera into an actual proper dedicated drone. Like having it on my T2 VTOL here is, you know, very good for like kind of a proof of concept. But I mean, if I just let go of my sticks, look, you can see the aircraft wobbling around quite a lot. It's a big aircraft, it is a tricopter, they are inherently unstable. I would like to have this camera on a more stable platform, maybe with a gimbal. And annoyingly, I haven't been able to find a gimbal that will fit this aircraft that has enough sort of like power to lift this camera. So I am thinking I'm going to build a proper drone, like a proper multi-rotor drone that can have the AxisFlying thermal camera on it and also the Caddx Infra with a switcher. So I then have best of both worlds in terms of like night vision cameras. And yeah, basically I want to make a dedicated kind of like search and rescue night vision drone. That is very much my goal. So hopefully at some point in a future video, that's what you'll see. I'm thinking it'd also be really cool to have like a searchlight on board as well. Like a high powered searchlight. And obviously have the cameras on the gimbal as well. That's what I'm thinking for the future. Anyway, I think it's now time to land the aircraft. So let me just get my phone out because I want to film this landing. It does look cool up there. There, I'm recording. Yeah, it does look cool just seeing it just parked there against the night sky. But let's now reduce the throttle and bring her into land. Because I'm obviously trying to operate my radio one-handed here, I can't adjust the camera gimbal, so I do apologise that the camera is probably not aimed at anything particularly interesting. Let's walk towards it as she comes down. So I can just use my mouth and bring her a little bit closer. Apologies for lack of narration there. I was using my mouth to operate the sticks on my radio. Yeah, bringing it down. This is such a cool aircraft. Such a cool aircraft. It looks so cool just up there against the night sky. I got the moon there as well. Look at that. Almost landed. There we go. Landed and then disarm. Disarm. There we go. So there we go. There's a flight of my Heewing T2 with the AxisFlying 256 thermal camera on board. And a little demo of all of the colour modes that are on the camera as well. Hope you enjoyed. Okay, now before I end this video, I just want to quickly provide you with a little information which you might find helpful if you're interested in replicating this project for yourself. Now, obviously getting the camera to go into colour mode was entirely due to Dwayne. It was his hard work in developing the hardware and the software which allowed it to happen. I can't really take any credit for it, so massive thank you to you, Dwayne. Now, obviously, if you want to replicate this project, you're going to need the same hardware and the same software. And Dwayne has basically said that he's happy for people to contact him. And down below, I'll provide a link to his YouTube channel. And he said that sort of potentially he would be up for sort of making some more propeller boards and sending them out to people, provided that people are happy to pay for the cost of the hardware, the manufacture, and crucially also the shipping. Now, Dwayne said that there's also potentially an alternative, rather than getting him to sort of like build you a custom board. Apparently there's actually a pre-existing microcontroller out there called a propeller flip. And apparently if you install the software that he's written onto that board, it should work just as well. Now, I don't know how exactly you'd wire that up. You'd have to speak to him about that, or maybe you can find the information online. But as for the sort of the propeller board that I've got here, in the corner here, I'll just provide a wiring diagram showing how I wired it to my camera and my drone, which hopefully some of you guys will find useful. Down below, I'm also going to post a link to Dwayne's GitHub page where he's provided the software so that anyone can download that and sort of tweak it if they want to. He's also said that he's going to post details of the project on his Hackaday page. So there's also a link down below for that. So yeah, hopefully the information I've given you in this video and those links down below will allow anyone else out there to sort of replicate this project if they want to. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, this isn't the end of the project. I'm now planning to move the thermal camera into a quadcopter, hopefully alongside the Calyx Infra and a gimbal, with the goal of making a much more stable and practical kind of like night vision, search and rescue sort of drone kind of thing. So hopefully there'll be a video about that coming up in the very near future. So yeah, that's basically all I've got to say for this video now. Again, massive thank you to Dwayne for sort of like your help in this project. If you've enjoyed watching this video, please do give it a like. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers guys, bye.